thanks. I'm not used to a mic, but we're gonna do it because we're recording, which is awesome. So thanks for having us. I would love to know before we start what people's familiarity is with housing TIF. So if you know a little bit, raise your hand. Okay, is this your first time? Raise your hand. Okay, you know a moderate amount, but you don't want to be like snooty and show off. So you know medium. Okay, great. All right, so that's good. We've got a little intro, a little advanced, or medium advanced, so this will be a good mix. So first off, so I am at CEDM. Just a little bit about CEDM, the Community Economic Development Association of Michigan. We are a community development membership association. We have 330 members across the state. Housing developers, nonprofits, local units of government, a big mix of folks and funders. It's a great group of people. We do a lot around housing, of course. We do a lot with capacity building for nonprofits and local units of government through fellowship and AmeriCorps programs. We have a mobility fellowship open now, and we're going to have a community development, sort of a general fellowship opening up in a few weeks. It's an affordable way to add capacity to your team for about a year, 18 months. We also have economic inclusion work and policy work across the state. If you want to know about any more of that, we have a ton on our website, or you can talk to me after. But today we'll be talking about housing. So yeah, and then we have SME.
Yeah. We're gonna. Cool. Okay. All right. Good to see everybody. As Nicole mentioned, I'm Travis Alden with SME. I get the question a lot, what the heck does SME stand for? Well, back in the day, it stood for Soil Materials Engineers, but we've expanded to do so much since then. It's just SME, like share or press or something, okay?
Yeah.
So I've been in community and economic development for 20 plus years, but long and short of it, SME, we're an engineering consulting firm. Everything in the development ecosystem, we kind of have our hands on. I was talking to Mike earlier. A lot of the stuff we do is underground. That's stuff that you don't see, but you really, really want to make sure it works right. And one of the things that we do quite a bit of in West Michigan in particular is brownfield redevelopment, which is where the housing TIF sort of falls into that bucket. So yeah, excited to chat with everybody today.
All right, thanks. And I would, here we are, in case you forget who we are, and our emails will be at the end so you have it. If somebody can give me a time check, like when we have maybe 30 minutes and then 15 minutes left, thank you. Cool, because I can't see the clock. All right. So today what we wanted to do when we're talking about housing TIF is first talk about why does housing development cost so much and why does it need subsidy? Because we're finding that throughout the state, it's not exclusive to Berry County, it's an experience everywhere. Some places it's much worse where things are more expensive. Think about the UP, think about more very rural areas, but a lot of pretty much across the board, any housing development is needing additional subsidy, just it's too expensive right now. So we're gonna talk about that. And then we're gonna talk about this tool, Housing TIF. It is a newer tool, it's very flexible, which is a lot of the reason why we like to talk about it and use it. There are other tools available to municipalities. We can talk a little bit about them if you want to, but TIF is what we're gonna be focusing on today. And one of the reasons that we really like it is because with TIF, local units of government can set sort of their standards. You can lead the way, you can say, we'll provide this to you if we get these other things that are part of our community goals. So that's a really nice thing about it is you can really frame it out and make sure that if you're gonna provide that incentive, that tax increment financing, that you can get what you're looking for out of it. So it's very flexible in that way.
Can I add one thing, just real quick? And I like how this is framed and titled as it be the community being in the driver's seat, because normally I think when we talk about development tools, that scary word incentives, typically, and we love our friends at MISHDA, we love our friends at MEDC, but typically those are programs that it's competitive across the state. You submit your application to the mystery black box in Lansing and you don't necessarily know how the sausage is made and how the decisions are made, right? This is the complete antithesis of that. This is 100% local decision making, where the community is in the driver's seat. And so I just wanted to sort of double click on that is such a crucial piece of this tool that is pretty unique and why it's so exciting to be able to utilize this in our communities.
All right, So we want to just talk about housing development, the cost and challenges, and we often talk about there being 5 L's of development. And those of you on the left side, do not cheat and look at the next slide. Give me one of the L's that you can think of that impacts the cost of development.
Location.
Say again?
Location.
Location. Ooh, that's not even one of them. I'm going to add it. We have 6. No, I'm just kidding. Labor. Yes, absolutely. What else?
Material.
Again?
Material.
Material. We're going to call it lumber, but you're right, because I got to go with the L thing, okay? But you're right.
Land.
Land. Maybe location and land. We'll do that together if that's okay. All right.
Okay.
We got, say again?
Loans.
Loans. Excellent. Or lending, but loans, might as well just call it what it is. So what do we got? We got land, lumber, loans. I already forgot the other one. Labor. One more?
Lansing.
Land. I kind of like that. Laws. So yeah, Lansing, laws, why not? Although some of them are local, some of them are state. We'll go with it. Okay, so these are the 5 L's, right? Lumber, labor, land, lending, and laws. So what about these is going to impact costs? We're going to do them one at a time. So about lumber materials, what's going on right now? How's that impacting the cost of a development?
Everything's going up.
Everything's going up. Wood, steel, gravel, I don't know, name it, it's going up. Yeah. What about labor? Say again?
Lack of.
Lack of. We lost a lot of construction and trade workers after the pandemic, right? Anything else there? Is there a lack of access to like architects or if not environmental consultants luckily, or, but no, other consultants that are really important to doing a project? Is there?
There was a huge lack of civil engineers available to stand off on that.
I love it. Civil engineers, right? We're missing them, which is really important as well. Okay, land. We okay with land? We have land? Access to land that's available for development? No. What's going on?
What's happening in the city, we're running out of land to build on.
Running out of land to build on. Might have to try and reuse something, an old building, or maybe, I don't know, probably want to talk about parking lots or something, but other underutilized spaces maybe. What else? Yeah.
Rurally, we have farmland preservation.
Yes, farmland preservation is going to limit in some ways where you can build. What else? This is not exactly land, but is there other things that if you don't have them might impact where you can build? Go ahead.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure, huge, right? Where's your water and sewer? Where are your roads? That's a huge cost if you need to build that out to do more development.
Nobody, the county has to do the land, but nobody, none of the counties are accepting new roads, so everything has to be on the builder and the community for that to happen. It's never.
Right.
The community doesn't.
So if you don't have an existing road, it's gonna be super hard to figure out how to build one because counties are saying no. Okay.
Actually, in some ways, it makes it easier to build. You don't have to build the county standard, but you have to figure out the funding for it going into the future. Because it used to be you built it, you paid for it, you gave it back to the county.
Got it.
Now you build it, and now you have to pay for the maintenance on it. You have to figure out how you're going to repave it all on whoever builds in those communities. So if it's a 9 neighborhood piece, they're going to have to pay for that road at some point in time. Now, if it's got 100 in there, that's not a big deal. To average it out, so they're all going to pay.
Right.
Which is where you get your HOAs. That's where you start with your HOAs, but HOAs aren't written appropriately to keep people, so they're only taking a road, they all seem to branch and expand because they didn't write the proper constitution.
Did you say you were a beginner? Because I don't think that you are on this.
Oh, no,
But anyway.
I'm a beginner to you guys.
To the housing
to
too.
you, but I
Okay.
get the rest of it.
All right, I'm going to repeat some of it just because it's being taped. So the county, if new roads are being built, they have to either be built privately and then maintained by whoever did the development or the HOA, or the local unit has to take over.
No
No.
local units are.
Actually, no locals are, so it becomes private and it's done by the HOA or whoever else is running it. You had something too.
Well, environmentally, I mean, Bear County has a lot of lakes and wetlands and everything, so if you want to build and it's going to impact the wetland, you have to create a wetland someplace else and that's going on.
That's great. So we talked a little bit about first land preservation, but also it's wetlands, lakes, other things. You probably have distances from the lakes you can't build. So there's a lot of factors in there too. You guys are good at this. All right, lending. What's going on with lending or loans?
Loan percent's going up, especially from a lot of economic and political environment changes.
All right, yes, I like the commentary, keep it coming. No, but yeah, we're having interest rates are going up, right? Across the board, but that's gonna impact both the builder or developer, but if you're selling them, then the mortgage rates and who can afford them. So it's important to think about that on both sides of the equation. And then laws or Lansing, either way. How do laws impact the cost?
Zoning is an increase. You look at the studies that show from minimal zoning to maximum zoning, and you can move a mile over and gain $250,000 in a house by just being a mile over because you're in a different zoning piece. They can add cost directly, both in extra material or things that need to be bought and fees that local community charges to come out and do an inspection, right? On top of your private inspectors that members all want to see.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all that adds up over time.
Right, so zoning laws, they're gonna vary from place to place. It may be cheaper in one community than another because maybe you have to have a larger lot size in one community. So to recover your cost of the land, you might have to build something bigger and sell it for more money. If it's smaller, it could be maybe more affordable. You're also mentioning some places are gonna have material requirements that they're gonna want a higher level of, you know, what it looks like and what it's made of, which makes it cost more, all that kind of
And
stuff.
inspectors, the mandatory.
And inspectors, yeah.
The mandatory, I want to make sure, the mandatory inspectors from that entity, so that government entity,
Mhm.
they want their money, they want to make money. And so that
You're gonna
costs a lot.
have zoning permit costs, building inspectors, all your trades, and every community is gonna be a little bit different unless you're sharing inspectors, which some places do. So you guys got these, you're nailing them. Travis, anything else?
Just going back to land, that, you know, what's available to the site is a piece, but also, you know, similar to interest rates, the cost of land has gone up significantly. I mean, I feel like once news hit that data centers were out there looking for stuff and they saw the Steelcase property selling for $200K an acre, everybody was like, ooh, everything is just way more valuable, which is not necessarily always the case, but acquisition, every single dollar that goes into that, similar to infrastructure, has to be spread amongst the housing units, so it's definitely an issue.
All right. Anything else anybody wants to add? Okay, great. So, wanted to kind of just talk through some examples, and it was fun for me to look up some data for around a couple communities around here. So, we've been using for a few years now, and it might even be old, that the cost per square foot to develop is roughly, and it varies a lot across Michigan, $250 a square foot. Does anybody have a sense of in their community how much it's costing to build?
You-
Is that high,
The
low?
house size, the lot size.
Just the cost per square foot for the building construction.
We hear a range
Are-
between that 250 and 325.
Okay, 250 to 325. Does that sound pretty good? Okay, so we're on the low end with this example, so I just want to kind of call that out. So just for the sake of an exercise, if we're going to build a modest house, 1,400 square feet, and it's 250 a square foot, the low end of that range, it's going to cost $350,000 to build a house. What are houses selling for in your communities? Is that high, low,
That's
for that size house? Go ahead.
average kind of.
Average, okay. All right, so I'm looking at the median sales price. I just pulled a few of these. If you haven't played with the Michigan Housing Data Portal, very fun for some quick data. So Assyria Township, it was 208,800, Delton 295, and then Irving Township 365,000. So if we were, so we're just kind of look at how much is needed to be the home at the median square price. It needs to be a lot cheaper to get to what things are selling for, that median sales price in those communities, right? Except for Irving Township, which looks like that one's about it, what's happening, okay? So that's sort of this idea of like, just the cost. We're not having a lot of products sell for what it is, the cost to build it. Now we have to look at what's affordable to people in the community, right? So I picked Delton because they were in the middle of that little set I just did. The median rental household, so they don't own a house yet, this idea that a renter that would want to move into home ownership, that median rental household income is $38,000. So if we want to say you could spend 30% of your income on something that's considered affordable, it would be a rent of $950. So if we're going to base that on $250 a square foot, really you can only afford something that was 380 square feet. That's a real small studio. It's been a long time since I've lived in, okay, I just gave away my age. But anyway, not everybody's going to want to live in something that small, right? So that's going to be not great. It's costing too much to build it, and then if we wanted it to be affordable to people who want to buy in our communities, it's also gonna have to somehow, we're gonna have a gap, right? Okay. I gotta keep looking at Travis, make sure he wants to add anything. All right. Wait, did I put that on there? Oh yeah, I must have, you move the order of slides and you kind of forget where you are. But, so, the reason we want to talk about how much it's costing is right now, again, to build a house, it's really hard to build that 350,000 square house and sell it to people who are living in the community, right? So sometimes we can't even afford to sell it for how much it costs. I don't know, how big are the houses that are selling? Let's talk about that for a second. Is 1,400 average, or things around 2,000, 2,500 square feet? How big are the houses being built? Being built. What's being built? How big are they?
That's not a problem. There's few neighborhoods. I mean, we gotta have to expand outways because you're not building big projects around here. But your problem is a lot of these that are being built are 3,000 square feet.
They're huge.
They're doing other crazy things. This is a great example. That extra nook that kicks out there that they decide to add onto that next to these houses, that if you would make that a straight wall would save $10,000 in this project. That extra niche that sticks out there and not bringing both those peaks, I can bring that same peak out evenly, or $10,000 more, get more square footage. But we don't build or design these houses to be efficient. So look, Caledonia going up there is a community that's doing that, where it's one roof peak, it's all built underneath one roof, garages in the upstairs. Those are efficient houses. But because of the way we do marketing, they're selling it for what they're costing at, and nobody wants them to because that's a larger square foot. It was built much cheaper.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not getting passed on to the community because we charge everything in real estate, and when a bank goes to approve it, they approve it at 200, they approve it by the square foot, what's the average square foot cost going around. It's not actually the design of the house. So when you build these crazy houses that have 3,000 square foot, and they got 6 different roof peaks on there, and that $50,000 to $60,000 in the house because the architecture couldn't figure out how to just make it look simple. Right?
So we got two factors here, right?
Well, but that's two factors. Because that's a 3,000 square foot house and they paid this much for it, it makes the other one that even if I go build a 3,000 square foot house over here and it's the exact, even though it costs $50,000 less to make it, I made it efficient, it's going to get the same amount out of it over here because it doesn't have all those gizmos in it. Because the bank's going to say this is what we appraised for based on the square footage.
Right.
Right? Because we don't actually look at how much it actually costs to build it. So that's a big part of the problem. Is we want these fancy things that aren't practical.
Right. And I want to hold on to that for a second. Let's go back. We'll hold on to it. We're coming to it. But like the size is huge. If you're building 3,000 square feet just to make it work, if it was efficiently built and you priced it for what it cost, it's still very high, right? Someone want to do 250 times 3,000 for me? Because I'm tired.
Yeah, you can go smaller.
But yeah, but that's what is being built. Again, it could be your zoning that's impacting that. It could be the market that's impacting it. The banks. There's a lot of factors, right? We talked about that laws, lending.
1,200.
Right.
I think it's 1,200.
But a lot of people aren't going to build smaller because they're not going to be able to get as much profit out of it. So we have to impact it, right? That's something we may want to influence with a policy to say we need some smaller. We need smaller housing, we need smaller homes because that's what we need, and here's what we want to do to get there. Anyway, so all good points, so these are great. So the reason we're talking about housing TIF is because it is something you can use to sort of fill gaps in projects to make sure the numbers work, but then also do it to meet what goals you have in your community. Now, it is a newer tool. It started in 2023. It's based in the brownfield law, which is why a lot of the environmental consultants are connected to that work, because even if it doesn't have any sort of environmental issue with it, they have the expertise in doing these tax increment financing plans that are part of it. But the whole point of the expansion, what's so exciting about it is previously, a lot of these tools weren't available to townships and smaller communities. It was only available to like core communities. So things like site preparation activities, infrastructure expansions or additions, all those things were not available in the brownfield TIF law unless you were a core community. Now, if you build even one unit of housing within a development, you are eligible for housing TIF. And then you have the ability to get reimbursed, the developer could be reimbursed for some of those things that are very expensive, like additional infrastructure. Maybe you're looking for different sized housing, so you could be incentivized smaller housing, more accessible housing. It seems like we never have enough accessible units in our communities, whatever it might be. Now, it also targets sort of middle income residents up to 120% of the area median income, which is always so fun to talk about. But let's look at what that means. Oh, not yet though. So what can be reimbursed? I mentioned some of it. Public and private infrastructure. Housing TIF is actually better than brownfield TIF here because you can do even private things like broadband, gas and electric, but also water, sewer, roads, septic, whatever you need. Like, it's amazing. It's much broader what's included in that general infrastructure. Some people are also using green infrastructure improvements like solar or wind or geothermal, depending on what your goals are. Again, that could be included and reimbursed through housing TIF. Safety improvements, if there are environmental concerns that come up, maybe you're building in a place that was some reason it was an old school site, had an old tank in it that needed to be taken out, cleaned up, that could be eligible. But also, you can actually get reimbursed for other things like the site prep. You can get reimbursed for rehabilitation of an existing building. A lot of people are looking at converting old schools or churches or even office buildings to housing. And then you can also get reimbursed for the gap that we're talking about to make it, if you have a gap in your sales product, if you're gonna do 12 new houses and you wanna sell them to families, you can't make it to work and every house has a gap of a certain amount of money, that can be reimbursed to the developer over time. And also for rental housing. But you have to decide what that is, up to 120% of the area median income. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. I'm gonna make Travis do this part.
Okay, so do we know what TIF is? We can just skip the slide, right? No. So tax increment financing, it is just a complicated way of saying we're going to play with the gap between the current existing taxable value of a site and what that new improved taxable value is going to be of that site. That's the increment, right? So this is my land. This piece of paper is an acre of ground. I'm going to build 8 houses on it. That's the remote. The paper was worth $50,000. That was the taxable value. Now it's $2 million. The gap from the $50,000 taxable value and the $2 million in taxable value, that's the increment, okay? So if I'm the local unit of government, if I'm the city of Hastings, I'm still getting my base taxable value on that piece of paper in perpetuity. You're not messing with that for any of this. It's that increase in taxable value, that's what you're playing with. That the argument is, if not for the investment of this project, there would not be that increase in taxable value to leverage in these ways. Does that make sense? So the idea is that, like I said, here's the baseline. This doesn't change. This is your increase as you're developing, as you're investing, and that sort of thing. It is a set timeline. It doesn't go forever. And then at a certain point, you uncap that, and everybody benefits from that increase. Okay? Does that make sense? That was sort of like the super quick, speedy version. Okay. That is probably the number one, I will say, lack of being informed pushback that we hear across the state in these projects is, I'm against this project because it's taking away our taxes from our local unit of government. It's taking away our taxes from the school. It's taking away our taxes from the library. That is not the case. each of those entities are investing their future tax growth over a certain period of time to make that project happen. But it is time sensitive, it's time bound, it's not forever. Does that make sense? Any thoughts, any questions?
What's the normal time bound?
So, well, I mean, I think we're getting into it, but it can go for up to 30 years. We're not seeing that very frequently, but that's one of the levers that the local community can pull, which we will get into. Yeah.
Well, that's great. It does vary a lot. We'll talk a lot about why people vary or how you can tell how long to do it. All right, we've been talking about this idea, right, that if you add even one unit of housing, then you're eligible to use this housing TIF. And we want to see that those units are up to 120% of the area median income. So I decided to pull that. Okay, so all the way down at the bottom, a one-person household, it's $84,840 for Berry County, which seems pretty high to me. Good incomes here, you guys. Those are high. Do those seem high to you, or does everybody in your family make this much? Good for you guys. This is awesome. But I'm not quite sure. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about what it would be, but I'm imagining that sort of the market rate sales would be eligible for folks that are probably more like 80 to 100% in this community. It's going to vary across the state. If you think about a place like Battle Creek is going to be very different than Berry County, or Traverse City then is going to be different. So this looks different every county across the state. So this is just for Berry County here.
Is it
Oh, go ahead.
only go by county, or can you actually drill it down to township?
It only goes by county, but HUD does provide a little differentiation. I don't know if it'll work. You can go by zip code. That's another, I don't know how many zip codes are in Berry County. 1, 2. So if there's a couple, that's the only other variation that you can get. And
That'd be a huge one, because you say Berry County, and that's
there's so much variation in counties. It is a frustration I have, and many have, because some communities it makes total sense, and if you're a lower income kind of pocket within the county, it's going to be way too high, and it might not get your housing needs where you need it to be and not serving your residents, right? It could be even that you're bringing people at higher incomes and not serving people who live there, which might not be what you want to have happen, right? So it's something you got to pay attention to. So depending on your community, you might say, well, we actually want it to be for folks at 80% of the area median income. This is one of the levers that you could decide on for your community. I don't know if that's right. That's one of the things you have to look at for each community. But I wanted to take a look at like wages and then who this would apply to. So again, that Michigan Housing Data Portal, pull up Berry County. I know this is part of the Kent County MSA, so it's a little bit bigger, but the top 5 sort of jobs, sectors, if you will: fast food workers, laborers and material movers, miscellaneous assemblers, registered nurses, and retail salespersons. They're all but the nurses are making really low, and the nurse is the only one as a single person that hits that 120% or is really close to it. So again, you have to have a real good sense of what people in your community are making, who you're trying to serve. That's something you need to know so that you can set your goals, like we want housing at this level to meet these folks, right? So it's important. That takes time, but there's usually a lot of people who can help you. Realtors are going to know the market super well. Your economic development agency is going to know what kind of jobs are out there, what they're paying, your friends and family. There's a lot of ways to kind of calibrate that so you have a sense of it. But if I looked at this, again, this is a county-wide and there's going to be a lot of fluctuation. But yeah, it seems to me that 120% is probably not going to help be what you need, and you're going to have to go a little lower. Okay, so we want to talk about how some communities are using housing TIF. So Travis is going to walk us through some case studies about some projects so you can see how it's used.
And before I jump into these, I'm going to editorialize a little bit, okay? So one of the things that we have heard in some of the communities that we've started to work with or start to educate on is, why would I even want to go down the road of using this tool? There was even one township trustee up north, and I won't mention the township. She goes, "You're asking us to be altruistic." And it's like, okay, maybe, but look at that list that Teresa just had up. I would argue that you go down this road, so 4 out of those 5 top 4 out of 5 of those jobs that are most plentiful in your community, the people who work those can actually afford to live in your community. That would be my argument. I come from economic development. Anybody who knows about economic development 101, you're visiting with your local employers, retention visits. I mean, 5, 6, 7 years ago, employers were not talking about housing as a barrier to expansion and growth. Now they are. You can't have a conversation with a local employer without housing coming up. We want our healthcare providers to expand. We want our Bradford Whites, and we want our Hastings Fiberglass, our Flex Fabs to expand. You can't do that if their local people don't have a place to live. Yeah, people will commute in, but they'll only commute in from so far, okay? All right, off my soapbox. So I'm gonna use 4 examples of projects that we have directly worked on at SME. Different sizes, different communities, and each one of them is a different type of developer. So I wanna make sure that we're kind of laying that groundwork. This is probably my favorite one to talk about, and some folks from Berry County are actually going to be visiting this project on Thursday, which is pretty cool. This is a small project in Lowell, just a little bit north up the road. Small community. I consider this sort of like a micro project. And it was a developer who is not really a developer. If anybody's familiar with Flat River Outreach Ministries, they're a local nonprofit in the Lowell community doing really good work for years and years and years. Social services, food pantry, a lot of family support, that sort of thing. They sort of had this epiphany of, we need affordable housing in our community. It's not happening on its own. If not us, then who? So, long story short, they were able to secure this underutilized lot on the edge of downtown, if you know where the ice cream shop is, on the main drag. It's just down from there. And they really wanted to target households deeply affordable. So this 50 to 120 AMI is a big range, but they really wanted to be able to hit those folks that were making significantly below the average for the community and make it affordable to them. It was about a $3 million investment, which is pretty big for a local nonprofit like this, but they were able to do it primarily through philanthropy, but from an annual operating cost to keep them affordable, they had this gap where on the pro forma it was ping and red, and it just wasn't gonna work. So we helped them put together a housing TIF plan, exactly with some of the stuff that we were talking about before. It's this rent loss. Like, they could go rent it on the open market for quite a bit more than what they're actually getting, but they wanted to make it deeply affordable. So this went through the Kent County Brownfield Authority. It was the first one to go through the Kent County Brownfield Authority. And it's a great project. They cut the ribbon maybe 6 weeks ago, and some people are moving in, so it's awesome. And so I use that example of, like, if and Wendy at Flat River Outreach Ministries would be okay with me saying this, if Fromm can do it, anybody can do it, okay? We can figure it out.
Where does that 43,000 come from? Because like our township can get it.
Say that again?
Where does that 43,000 TIF revenue come from?
It comes from the increase, because they pay taxes, they pay property taxes. It comes from their increased property taxes from the empty land that was there to the 17 units that are now there. It's the paper remote analogy.
How many years are they doing it? Do you remember?
I knew you were gonna ask me that
Okay.
question. I don't recall the number of years, yeah.
It's the.
But it's a few. Oh, yeah, Haley would know. It's 20?
It's 20.
It's 20.
It's 15 with 5 years of revolving loan fund capture on the end of that.
So they're still getting that base value, like we said, right, for that land that was there. So there's still taxes coming in, and then that increased tax revenue is helping to cover the
The Flat River Outreach Ministry, that 40,000 or that 43,000 they're getting as a reimbursement each year, that is 43,000 that they are paying to the taxing jurisdictions, and then it's coming back to them.
Okay, so they're still paying the revenue, and then that's why it's considered revenue, because it's coming back out. So they're paying it in.
I see.
So to me, when you said that earlier, I'm like, okay, so we just don't even collect it.
Yeah.
We're waiving it. We're collecting it at that increased rate, and then sending it back to them, a portion of it back to them.
Right. And it's important that you collect it, because you need to verify they're doing what they say they were doing, right? So this example, they're only getting reimbursed for that rent loss, right? So you'll be doing it as a community, or maybe you'll contract someone to do it to make sure that the rents are at the right level and that, you know, people are at the right incomes that are paying it. If it's infrastructure that you're covering, you're gonna be able to tell if they did that infrastructure. So you have to reimburse, making sure that they did what they said they were gonna do, and you do it each year. So it's a nice check. It's good that it comes in. It is some work on the part of the Brownfield Authority and the local unit of government that's collecting the taxes, but it's an important check to make sure they're meeting that kind of agreement of what they said they were gonna do.
Then the developer, once you're has to apply for that money.
Yeah.
We just, we had a situation.
Yeah, they need to go get it.
That's all we forgot, where they get money.
Right?
Well, it's on them, that's not on the city, right? Yeah, yeah.
And you had a question, I thought, or a comment?
Well, I was just curious, is this just one unit for 2.7 million?
No, it was 17 units.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
This is just one, this is an example of one of their,
Yeah, I see.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any more questions on this one? Yes.
So the homeowner pays the taxes to the township gives it back to the developer.
Because they're these are rentals, so,
Oh, so it's developer.
so FROM, that's the acronym.
Okay, yeah.
FROM is paying and it's coming back to them,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you, yeah, that's my question.
Okay,
How
yeah.
do you do it with a homeowner? when-
We're gonna get what you want.
Okay.
You are? Okay,
Wait.
thank you.
Good question. We got you.
So here's a local example. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Mid-Villa project up in Middleville. I'm a Middleville resident. It's been really exciting to see this kind of come to fruition. I think this was the third or fourth one that went through in the entire state. So we were still building the planes we're flying in. Hindsight's always 20/20. Could have done a few things different or whatever, but ultimately it's achieving what it was intended to. So again, fairly small population. And everybody knows the Mid-Villa site, vacant for a long time. It's one of those sites that people drive by. Somebody should do something with this site. But it was very difficult for someone to do something with that site without some sort of intervention. So again, very different from a local nonprofit who's not a housing developer. This is a seasoned developer who does projects throughout West Michigan. And it's obviously a larger scale project, 144 units across, 6 buildings or something like that. And this is a situation where they had targeted essentially the average median income for the community. And at the time, they were doing that for 100% of the units. It wasn't just a handful, it was for 100% of the units. Because a lot of the housing studies and that sort of thing that the community had done articulated that is the sweet spot that the community as a whole really needed. Significant investment. They had just under $5 million in eligible activities, which again, this was primarily that rent loss. Now, Nate, the developer, he probably could have rented these out, or he could have built this in Caledonia or Byron Center, or he did the exact same project in Hudsonville, didn't have to do any of this because he could rent them out for $2,200 a month, no problem. You're not gonna get that in Middleville, nor should you try to get that in Middleville. So you had to be able to do this in order to get the rents down to that $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 number, which still seems like a lot to a lot of us, but that's the AMI, and that's what the numbers say. So yeah, and they're all built out and they're leasing up and all that good stuff. Any questions about this one? Again, totally different scale, but same tool.
So Travis, for this, so in the brownfield plan, I think you were stating that they have to state, like the developer has to state how many units that they are targeting at that specific AMI. So it sounds like this developer stipulated that 100% of these units are going to be income certified.
That was the way it was stipulated at the beginning.
Okay.
Yes.
And was there changes to that? Or-
There's discussions, I believe there's discussions currently happening right now of was that the right decision to make at the time? Because there's a lot of folks who would like to live there that are making more than that window that they said, and you're not, if you did 100%. It's tying the hands a little bit. This is a good example where if there's one thing that I want communities and community leaders to pull out of this is, in no way, if you're an entertaining housing TIF or a housing TIF curious, in no way is it somebody saying, this is how you need to do it. I mean, yes, there are boxes you need to check, and there are certain things that you have to do to be compliant with the, with the act and whatever, but nobody's saying you have to do this percentage AMI. There's nobody saying it has to be this number of units. There's nobody saying it has to be, you are in the driver's seat, to go back to the title, of essentially all those variables. And that's something that's really important to, I guess, continue to beat that drum.
Travis, when we negotiated with Allen Edmonds for 120 unit projects happening north of Hastings, it's inside the Hastings city limits, but we had to come up with a brownfield plan first. So the plan says that, in this case, we originally said that we had to have at least 20 houses built affordable, offered because they're affordable. Through negotiation, we changed that down to 10 to make it so the TIF capture would be more attractive for them, I guess. If we had any less than 10, then they couldn't build them because they couldn't recoup that money they said.
Sure. Yeah,
It's all negotiable.
Yeah, what Mayor Tassavo was saying was the city of Hastings, and we'll get into policy development, but they were proactive and developed a policy in terms of like, if we're gonna implement this program in our community, these are the ways that we want to incentivize it. And it had, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but there were different variables that they had said, these meet the needs of our community. These are the ways that we want to push on those. And like you said, it's always a negotiation. Right. So we'll get into that. Yeah. So I think the next one is habitat. Yeah. So it's an urban project, I realize that, but it is only 27 units. So I thought it was applicable to mention that in this context. And this is a owner-occupied situation, which I will preface this by saying that using the tool for things like the rent loss or development loss for owner-occupied is a different beast, and it is in my opinion, significantly more challenging and will not work in a lot of situations unless it's a nonprofit developer like this. Not to say it can't be, but that's why you see the Allen Edmonds of the world. They're applying for the housing TIF for their rental their rental product, not necessarily the owner-occupied stock. So, but this is a Habitat for Humanity of Kent County project. They just broke ground on this 2 or 3 weeks ago. Southwest side of Grand Rapids off Cesar Chavez, if you're familiar with that. But it's the mission of Habitat for Humanity to build affordable housing for people and to foster home ownership. To do it in a multifamily condo form factor like this is very unusual. They are now being asked by habitats across the country, how the heck did you guys figure out how to do this? Exceedingly complicated. But they were able to figure out, and this is the first example where we have, yes, there was a potential, there was the development loss, which that kind of shows the number up there, talking about how expensive it is to build. That's what it costs per unit. They have to keep everything under a certain dollar amount because they're habitat. And so basically you're selling it at 50% off, right? You can't just eat that loss. So that's where this comes into to make that work. And this is a situation where it also helped fund infrastructure. Like it was like a storage barn for like a lot of their vehicles and that sort of thing. It didn't have enough of the infrastructure needed, water lines and that sort of thing to serve a 27 unit development. So that had to be beefed up. There was a lot of site prep. There were some environmental things because it had sort of like an industrial sort of use over the years. So yes, there was the development cost, or excuse me, the development loss was a big chunk of the housing TIF, but it also helped pay for some of these other items as well. So that's an owner-occupied sort of example I wanted to use. And then the last one, I threw this in here because it's mixed use. Again, 24 units over 3 or 4 bays, that is any downtown, anywhere scale. So it's in Easttown, again, Grand Rapids, but very rough, had fallen on hard times, absentee landlord, that sort of thing, property. If you Google Robinson Flats, that's what it's called. But there's just a local restaurant owner that wanted to develop this. Again, he wouldn't consider himself a developer, but a local restaurant owner that put this plan together. And this is one where they were able to leverage housing TIF for a bunch of different ways. I mean, yes, there was some potential rent loss, but that wasn't the lion's share. And again, you could apply that to the whole project, even the commercial pieces, to make that happen because there was a housing component. So again, I know we were talking about 100% housing projects up to this point, but I wanted to use this as an example because it can work for mixed use in a traditional downtown sort of setting. So I realize those last couple I kind of sped through, but I want to make sure we get to everything else. Any questions about these examples? Okay, all right. And if anybody does have questions about sort of like the minutia, sort of like the behind the curtain brain damage that came from like all the things that came together, feel free to reach out. We're willing to have that conversation. It just probably wouldn't be productive to get into that level of detail here.
I want to go back to our question earlier, because it did really cover what we're talking about. So these communities down here, at least my community, doesn't do rental. That's not the community we're in. But it's housing. But it could be. I got it. But to keep the community happy, that the community is a single-family housing and wants to bring people into that. That's that community we're in. So what I'm seeing, what you're saying is that doesn't really work for this.
I would disagree. We are seeing it's different, and you have to kind of run the numbers and see how it works. You have to do that for all of them. So one of the things, if you're doing, because we're talking about the developer pays the taxes, right? They get reimbursed. If you're doing for sale, home ownership with the PRE, the homestead, the taxes are reduced, right? So you have just less available that's going to come back into the project. So that just means you have to factor that in. So some projects are too small. It probably won't be worth the, what is it? The orange isn't worth the squeeze or whatever. It's maybe too much. It might not work. You might want to use a different tool. But if you're adding a lot of infrastructure, if it's a new subdivision and you're putting in new roads and water and sewer and broadband and whatever, then it may make sense. So you just have to look at it. You also have to kind of know what your millage rates are. It's always really interesting, the variation, right? Because again, that's the taxes that are coming into a project. And then how you look at homeownership, we keep talking about like all these things. There's a lot to consider. Are you going to price it lower like Habitat did? Some communities, a couple of them are kind of exploring long-term affordability. Others are saying it'll just be affordable for the first buyer. So that's a decision to make as well. So it can work for home ownership. You just gotta kind of look at it again, kind of test out a project almost and see how it'll work. And Travis will help you do that. See how I signed him up for that?
Well, and so not to put Dave on the spot, but look at the Allen Edward projects that are happening, and Sable Homes is doing it now, really sort of across the region and across the state. I'm going to make up a number. I'm going to do a 60 home development. Maybe I'll do 40 of them as sort of my normal product that I do that's just market rate, whatever, but I'm doing 20 of them as a housing TIF sort of project. Maybe they're rentals, that sort of thing, but that allows me to pull this lever where now I can use housing TIF to pay for the curb and gutter, to pay for the roads, to pay for the grading, to pay for all those sorts of things that inherently is going to make the rest of those market rate homes less, because I'm not having to build those costs into each of those lots. Does that make sense? So I mean, there are ways you can do this. It's just not as clean as if I was doing it as just like here's an apartment building. Does that make sense?
Because Allen Edwards is everywhere. One of the things that's been really interesting, so they have done some for the home ownership. If they're doing a larger project, what they've, at least one of the Brian Farkas there has shared, is they'll set aside some units to be rental as the units absorb, right? So you've got to, if let's say they're doing, 30, maybe they're doing first phase is 10, it might take a minute to sell, and maybe you rent a few more, and then you do the next phase. So it's interesting how they've figured out ways to sort of use housing TIF. Some of them, maybe 20% of are affordable, whether it's for sale or rental, and then they're balancing it to make sure they can make the project work over the long term. A lot of things, apparently I'm going in the weeds now. You were supposed to go in the weeds now, but it can get complicated, but there are some other examples, and we can share a few if you want to see some other homeownership ones.
It's not a cookie cutter thing. There are different pieces that you weigh and that sort of thing, and that impacts the project.
It's like you love the flexibility, but then it's super
Right.
flexible. You can get into the weeds. Yeah.
I think a lot more of the variance, so Travis, is what the city has to do to make that project work. We're looking at probably $8 million investment in infrastructure. We're gonna have to put a water tower. So what we've negotiated with them is how quick we can start through TIF, how quick we can start recovering some of the city's costs. But,
Yeah, did everybody hear that? There's a public infrastructure piece to that project in Hastings that they're utilizing this for in conjunction with the developer to make that possible.
Right, and that's, you're not the only community, but I love that. So if the city is gonna be putting in the infrastructure, you can write the housing TIF agreement that you get paid back, that reimbursement goes to the city as sort of a co-developer, if you will, because they're doing the infrastructure, and then let's say that's whatever that amount is, and the rest can go to the regular developer for the housing.
Well, and you can negotiate who
Yeah.
gets that money back first.
Exactly, which is really important, especially if the city's bonding, or maybe you get a USDA infrastructure grant, and then you can use the TIF to pay that, or loan, you could use that to pay back the loan, so timing is really important. Yeah, yeah.
So Dave, I guess this goes along with that. So it's great that they're funding some of this infrastructure up front, right? But 20 years from now, how does the city
Well,
maintain it?
supposedly, that's one of the one of the sticking points right now. Because once that stuff's all put in there, and the developer got their money back to put it in, we have to make, when you put a road in, you were saying how a private road, after a certain amount of time, it can revert back to the city or the
It
county.
doesn't, the county,
Well, what happens with developments in the city of Hastings, and you'll see it up there on North Street, Allen Edmonds came in, they built about 20 houses down through, they extended North Street. They paid to have it, and this was before TIP funding, they paid to have all the infrastructure put in. They put the water and sewer, storm drains, curb and gutter, blacktop in. Well, once they did that, and we're having an issue right now, they put it in to their specs, they put in 2 inches of asphalt. Well, we're gonna spend $120,000 here in the next few weeks to repave that street. Are we getting any money back? Well, because there was no TIF involved, they didn't, it's not a PUD or anything, we're getting the full tax back on that property. But a lot of times when you do like TIF funding, it's like for 20 years, you don't start recuperating that money. Yeah, you'll get paid back for some of our infrastructure we put in.
And that's a great consideration for how long as well. I was talking with Tony Lenti and Mishta, and we were talking about rentals, and he goes, so if your TIF is going, let's say it's a long one, it's a big project, and it's going 25 years, well, most rental units need to be redone around 15 to 18 years. So how does that work if, you can't tap back into it? Same thing with the infrastructure, how long until you're repaving that road, or you have to fix some underwater infrastructure. So those are things, again, to sort of consider around how long your duration is and those kinds of
Make sure they put it
pieces.
into the proper spec. It sounds like they got away with handing you something that was.
Yeah.
The road's been the only problem, the sewer, water, and everything else.
It's just the road.
It's up to the city spec. We require that when they come in for a building permit. When they come into the planning commission for a site plan, this is what we tell them you have to do.
Yeah.
And I have confidence that they're gonna do the right thing, but like Travis.
Get
said,
those engineering companies out to inspect.
Well, what happens at the end of that 25 years, and now all of a sudden you're gonna, the taxes go up on all that property, the city's gonna generate a few more dollars. But I think, I'm not totally involved in everything that's going on as far as negotiations, but we're talking to them right now about after that, who's gonna, there's gotta be some kind of fund put aside or whatever to maintain that road. Supposedly but this is the first thing I've ever been involved with residential TIF. And it's new, and you think you got, and I've talked to Brian Farkas a number of times, he has me on speed dial sometimes. And he, you know, he wants to get it done, and he feels that all this stuff is gonna fall in place. Well, it doesn't. You know, and I can't vote to do a project like that, you know, commit the city to $9 million of infrastructure, $7 million to get a new tower. I can't commit that if we don't know the project's gonna be done. You know, let's say we agree to everything, the city starts putting all this stuff up, and all of a sudden they, you know, because of the economy, like what happened in 2012, all of a sudden they walk away from it. Now I've got to saddle my constituents, taxpayers, with that bill. And it's not fair to the people, so we need to figure out some way where the contractor comes into town is gonna reimburse you for all these expenses.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, there's another probably 40 or 50 acres up there that they can develop, but we need a water tower, so somebody is gonna have to pay for it.
Great question. Hold on to that, we might get there. Yes.
I'm gonna hold on to it.
Yeah.
And to follow up on that, and the cost of an infrastructure over time, and the replacement of it. So I think I love hearing the talk about these negotiations, especially the term and what things are eligible, because that street may have to be rebuilt in 30 years. So by the time you start collecting any property tax on that, you're already sort of ready to replace some of the elements of it. And so I think it's really important to consider what those, you know, replacement schedules might be, or the, you know, capital improvements.
It's almost like, okay, this is a geeky comment, but it's almost like when you have a project like that, it's almost like you need to do kind of a mini pro forma for the project. There's like the pro forma for the housing development, but then there needs to be one for the municipality too. At what point does this make sense, you know, for the payback and whatever. The one thing that's also a pretty common misconception is that it's all or nothing. So like, and I'm just picking on you, Catherine, because you just said it, but like, oh, it might be 25, 30 years before you get any property taxes out of that development. Some will say some will be all or nothing, but you can negotiate a 70-30, you can negotiate a 60-40. That'll extend it out further, but it's the dollar amount that is your agreement with the developer. It's a $10 million thing, and it's like if you can slice and dice it to where, you know, maybe the developer wants that 10 million in 12 years, but it's like, nope, we want to go 70-30, and you're going to have to do it over 15 or 16 because we need this money from the get-go to put into a sinking fund, you know, for whatever. Again, it's all a negotiation, and that's all on the table.
And depending on what you're using it for, right? So this project has a lot of infrastructure, so you can say in the first 5 years, first 8 years, the developer gets the full reimbursement. But then after that, when you're paid, you know, when a lot of the infrastructure is done, then maybe it's an 80-20 or it can phase. And some communities do that. So over, let's say it's a 20-year TIF, it could go from 100% to the developer to then 80 to 70 to 50 and then out. So there's that flexibility, so you can think about those things like maintenance and those other costs. So again, lots of options, almost too many.
Parting thing, when we did Mid-Villa, there were no examples to pick from. Okay, now we have 3 years worth of examples across the state of different communities, developers that have done different things. If there's a community that's looking to do their first ever housing TIF, you are not on an island. Use your resources, use CEDM, use us, use MML, use MTA, use all of those to crowdsource. Okay, asking the question, where has it worked well? You will get a lot of, you know, suggestions.
All right, good stuff.
So, just a quick question. They've already had something similar to this with this, like TIPA, really for a super long time, but that was more on an industrial and commercial sort of.
In districts, right? Like a downtown development authority or an industrial park, yes.
So this is just a different spin on it, but it really relates particularly to housing.
And specific projects, so like one project at a time as opposed to that bigger district.
And I think one of the things I'm kind of hearing is that at some point, folks just need to put their thinking caps on and say, what does our community need? Work with developers to make a good fit, like 360, where it's a really good fit. Or this is our community, You know, and again, like you talked a little bit about, you know, here's an example of a large rental, here's an example of some smaller rental, but here's some single family and planned development. Small
Yeah.
subdivision.
Yeah.
But we both kind of have it's later, but like running through your master plans, running through any other housing plans, your infrastructure, right? What is your capital improvements plan saying? Your parks, like all that stuff, right? Some of your aspirational stuff, but then also your financial picture, right? And what are those, having a water tower, what are those big leaps? Like how many units can you add before there's a big infrastructure cost? And sort of thinking ahead on that. So it's a lot to sort of look out for, but I think that comprehensive look is a good way to set up sort of a, if not a full-on policy, but just some clear guidance so you can have that conversation with developers. One of the reasons CNIM's got involved, and we put together this housing TIF policy guide, which I'm gonna reference, and there's a lot of material there. There's a lot of examples of policies, there's TIF tables, there's scenarios, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But the reason we did that is because we heard a lot of communities being like, oh my God, what is this? We don't know what it is. We don't know if we want anything to do with it. Or we actually heard from a lot of folks like Travis, who on the consultant side was saying like, some developers are coming in and asking for a lot and the communities don't know where to start. And so they don't know where to start with the negotiations. So that's why we got into this and put together so many materials and resources. So Travis is right, there's a lot available to you. A lot of people have done it. Of course, when you talk to people who've done it, they're like, and here's what we do different next time. But there's a lot of lessons learned, and I think people are really interested in talking about it and learning more about how to make it work best. And we're gonna go through a couple more things here.
And we talked about a chunk of this stuff. The only two things I'll point out too is the office to residential conversion. I mean, this is being done in some of the larger urban areas, but think about it in your smaller communities too. And I mean, I'm gonna use the Rite Aid example. I mean, everybody's got like some commercial property that it's like, okay, nobody's ever actually gonna reactivate that thing again. Okay, think about it creatively for housing. There's ways to do that. And then infrastructure only. We are seeing some of these come down the pipe now where it's like, they're not looking for affordability, they're not looking to get it under a certain point, but they just need to have certain infrastructure done, typically that aligns exactly with what the local unit of government wants. So like this, it's a mock-up and they look kind of SimCity, but this is a project in Saugatuck Township that we're working on, which there is no affordability component. I mean, it's Saugatuck Township, but they're using it along. The developer is partnering with the township to extend municipal infrastructure across the Blue Ribbon Highway there, along with a pedestrian trail, and it's all like this public infrastructure, because that's the piece, needs to be, you know, kind of public good infrastructure that they're helping fund through this brownfield TIF. It's a kind of win-win for everybody. So
again, that example, their priority maybe wasn't the affordability piece, it was infrastructure and then that pedestrian improvements and those sorts of things. You can kind of model it how you want to. Which is pushing us into our next part, good segue, yay. So this is a ridiculous list of too many things, but possible levers or priorities that your community can have. And in addition to listing these, I wanted to talk a little bit about the impact on cost, because if your community is saying, look, we're only going to give you housing TIF if you do X, Y, or Z, what does X, Y, and Z do to the total project cost? That's something that you also kind of have to be thinking about. Some things it's low. I think accessibility, if people know that on the front end and they're building housing, it doesn't really cost you more. You just have to plan for that. Have your architect or your builder be planning for that on the front end so there's no step entry, so that your doors are wide enough so you meet all the accessibility requirements, right? So that one's low. But if you're gonna ask for a lot of infrastructure, you know, and big lots of improvements on water, sewer, you're doing a very large sub, we're adding a lot, that's gonna increase the cost of the project a lot. Very deep affordability of units, also especially rentals, because that's over the duration of the TIF usually. You want to keep them affordable the entire time that they're getting reimbursed. Then that one can also impact the pro forma or the cost of the project as a whole. Other ones will vary a lot. I like to talk about variety of housing types. I was kind of looking at that housing data portal. There's a lot of seemed like a lot of like 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses, not a lot of small stuff. I don't know if you want it, but if you think about incentivizing housing TIF and you're requiring smaller units, we usually can get more smaller units, like a cottage court on a couple sites, right, than 2 big houses, right? So it actually might be cheaper for the developer because they can sell more units. So it really depends on what you're doing. Also, when you think about rehabbing some of those buildings, that office conversion or that mixed use that Travis showed, it depends on what you're dealing with. If you're putting residential and there's 2 or 3 stories, you may have to do fire suppression. So you have to maybe run a new water line, right? Which maybe you didn't think you had to do the fire suppression. That's gonna be a decent chunk of change. But in other cases, it might not be very much to do a conversion. It's only 2 stories, you have retail on the first floor, you can put in some units above it, and it's not gonna be that huge of an increase of cost to incentivize sort of that commercial and then upper story residential. Parks and green space, depends on what you're asking for. If you're asking for a small playground, or if you want, you're asking for a big park or a long connection on your non-motorized trail. So it's just these kinds of things to think about. But all of these things can be reimbursed with housing TIF, which is pretty wild to think about. So again, looking through some of your plans, some of your goals, your master plan, any housing documents, your parks plan, your capital improvements plan, whatever it is, and seeing what those goals are and figuring out your priorities. Not a laundry list of 20 maybe, but what are your 3 absolute, we have to have these 3 things, and then maybe the other ones are, if you do these additional things that we'd like, we'd consider adding some more years to the TIF, extending it so we can get that also. Okay. Oops, here's a clicker. So what are those important policy considerations? You know, sometimes there's some limitations on growth, or there's specific areas you want to see it, right? Where there's existing infrastructure. Some places have areas they want to see redevelopment in this part of town, or there's certain buildings that they're looking to rehab, those kind of that school that's been sitting there that no one's fixed up, or a church that's been left behind. It could be anything, but there's usually a couple problem properties, right? That you could potentially say, we'll give a little bit more of housing TIF if you address this problem, you know, this property that we've been wanting to see redeveloped for a long time. Are there goals for your affordable or attainable housing? Are you looking to add 20 or 30 affordable for sale units or rental units in your community? That could be in addition to others. What does that look like? And if you are adding units that are affordable or attainable, what level of affordability of that area median income? And that's going to take some looking at the incomes of people of your community, what things are selling for, what kind of jobs are open that you're trying to fill. I remember early on talking to folks in Alpena, and they have so many positions open in their hospital because people don't have housing to live in. So even the president, the new president of the hospital, wasn't able to find stuff, and was commuting a massive distance into Alpena because there was no housing. And now you think about your med techs and your pharmacy techs and your people cleaning the hospital, how are they gonna afford what's there if the president can't find housing? So there's knowing from your economic development team, like the jobs that are available that can't get filled is another way to sort of pinpoint some of the housing needs and what price point you might need to be at for sale or rental. That mix of rental and home ownership, I know some communities here are just home ownership and that's where you want to go, and then there's some that are looking to have a mix of the two. So what does that look like? And then what types of housing sizes do you need? Is it big? Is it small? Is it a mix? Would you do something like a cottage court? Would you allow something like an accessory dwelling unit? It all depends. I'm not saying you should. Every community is going to be different. And then how long will you do that housing TIF? That's going to be another big question, and it might be related to the infrastructure we talked about. It could be also any other service levels. We have some stuff about that in our guide too you could look at. Now, that was a lot. But there's there's a lot about how to evaluate a proposal. So let's say you figured out your priorities, you know what you want, you communicated it to the developer, they're submitting something to you. And what you guys have is a brownfield redevelopment authority that can help you, right? So you have some staffing there, they're gonna be able to help you go through the application, make sure it's complete, and then you have to evaluate it and make sure it's got everything that you asked for, it's doing what you want it to do, it hits whatever rental or sales price points you're trying to get at. You understand how, if there's a rental loss calculation or for sale price calculation, that you understand how that was done and it makes sense. And actually that's really important because MISHDA, if you're asking for the state contribution to the tax increment financing, they actually have a very high rent calculation, and that might be way too high for your community. I think most communities it's too high, sale and rental price. So you need to know, and you need to know what's a reasonable rent or a reasonable sale price in your community for whatever the unit that they're building. Because you're gonna need to set that. If you use MISHDA's calculation, it's probably gonna be too high and not get you what you need. This is a lot. But one of the other things communities have done is they've utilized some of the standards that MEDC does in evaluating a pro forma. And it's another way you can kind of calibrate, looking at the debt service coverage ratio. Every development is borrowing money from a bank, and usually for the bank to be happy, they need to know that project will always have at least 1.2 or 1.4 times the amount of their monthly loan payment on hand, right? So, and you do that in your pro forma and you look at it over the course of the project. So you can use things like that. You can use actually the MEDC pro forma, so it's easier to evaluate something consistent. And you can use their standard for the return on investment that goes to the developer or something else. If you're Habitat for Humanity, they're a nonprofit developer. Their whole mission is to help low-income folks buy housing, so they're not gonna be looking for as much of a return. In fact, they just might take a developer fee. So this would be something you would also have to calibrate. But there's ways to do this. You don't have to do it alone. One thing that some communities are doing, and you might do this with your engineering review, when someone comes in with a site plan, you might require an escrow, right? Where you have to pay someone special to evaluate another piece of it. So some folks are doing with their housing TIF applications that are asking folks to submit, the regular fee to have your staff review it, but then an additional fee to get someone to get in there and look at the financials. So you don't have to do that on your own, and you can contract with folks to take a look at that. And you don't have to specialize if you're only gonna get a housing TIF application every year, every 2 years, every 5 years. You can get help evaluating it. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. Just one, I guess, a couple of comments. Because we work with, at SMA, we work with communities, but we also work with developers. So we kind of have that, kind of both of those lenses. The couple of things that I'd mention is we recommend to every community that we work with, ask for the pro forma. Ask for the pro forma, ask for the pro forma. If there's a developer that is asking for housing TIF to make this thing and they say, we need this to make it pencil, I mean, who's sick of hearing, I need to make it pencil, right? But they don't want to show you the pro forma, my spidey sense is going off, okay? The developers who know what they're doing and the ones who are well-versed in this and the ones I would argue, again, editorializing, this is Travis talking, not SME talking, the ones that you want in your communities are the ones that will be transparent, okay? We advise everybody to ask for those pro formas. And that also helps everything be much more transparent where when you get the folks coming out of the community saying, my tax dollars are just going to line that developer's pockets. You can lay that right out and it's like, nope, they're just trying to get a 7% return because there's risk here, otherwise I can go get 6% with some corporate bond where there's no risk, you know what I'm saying? These are folks investing and it needs to have a return. And that 6 to 12% that MEDC uses, that's pretty spot on. People might freak out that it's 10 or 12, but it's like there's also a lot of risk that goes into these things too. So Okay, there's my little 2 cents.
I would agree. I would never consider anything unless I had a pro forma. So my previous life, I worked for Washtenaw County in the Office of Community and Economic Development. We had a brownfield authority. It was a standard requirement for brownfield, but then also for housing TIF. And then if we had partners on a project that we wanted to check in on, one of our first housing one was with this firm Renovare, and they did a for sale home ownership project in Ypsilanti, Michigan. So there's a home ownership one. It did get additional support from like ARPA and other things, but they did it. But the Community Foundation was an investor. IFF, which is a community development financial institution, had money in, and we could talk to them as well as the local unit and say, how's it looking on your end? You guys do underwriting way more deeply than we do or can do, and they would let us know, you know, if they had concerns or how things were going. And that was a relief too, to know that I could talk to other people who were in on the deal and make sure they were comfortable as well. So again, you're not alone on this. And there's a lot of opportunity.
And like Teresa mentioned a couple minutes ago, if Berry County has a brownfield redevelopment authority, the city of Hastings one has one also, but Berry County has a brownfield redevelopment authority. Every township, every municipality can utilize that BRA for this TIF. If I'm, you know, if I'm the village of Nashville, I shouldn't have to feel like I have to do all this on my own. You utilize the partnership with the county BRA. Jen and her team works with them very, very closely. No wrong door. Start that conversation. Yeah.
Okay, I mentioned CDM has this housing TIF policy tool online. Again, there's a ton in here. We have some sample policies and about 15 from other communities across the state. We have a webinar recording. We'll have some case studies up there. There's stuff around what application materials to have, how to evaluate it, how should I review my plans. It's all up there. It's probably too much, so use what's useful to you, but it is available to you. And then we made it. What questions do you guys have left? I put Jess on here because she couldn't come, but she wanted to be here, so in case you want to contact her.
She's really the expert at SME. She's just in Minnesota today, so yeah. That covered it.
What questions you got left? Anything? Or we hit them all?
I think once a project like this starts, they'll have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
You know, Alan Edmonds and our city manager negotiate most of it. I've been kind of on the outskirts, but I learned a lot just in the last 6 months we've been doing this.
Well, and since Dave piped up and we have another couple minutes, the city of Hastings was very proactive, the city of Hastings was proactive in putting their policy together, like Dave mentioned earlier, and they have things in there, like specifically calling out their master plan, like it says in here, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff, but there are specific areas of the community, specific neighborhoods in the city of Hastings that are called out in their master plan that they wanted to see additional investment, development in. So they called that out in their housing TIF policy. That you will get an extra number of years or whatever in your TIF payback if you develop in these sort of neighborhoods of focus, to take a Grand Rapids term. And there's also language in there about a certain level of affordability, and there was language in there about certain housing typology. It's like you don't want to just incentivize the same thing over and over and over again. So there was a lot of intentionality behind that example. So yeah. Bunch of kudos to you guys, but yeah, but they're doing it, you know, kind of the right way. Yeah.
Is your recommendation that the communities in Berry County all work individually to help prioritize that list of TIFs that they would like to see incentivized, like the city of Hastings did, but what's going to work or be desired in Delton is going to be different than Nashville and different than Hastings Township, which may or may not have, you know, capacity within their local units of government. But every community is going to be a little bit different, and especially the communities that have done their own master planning. And so you know, I've talked to Jennifer a lot, this, you know, we say Berry County, but it's a complex
Yeah.
puzzle
Yeah. It's not one size
with
fits all.
some very
Yeah.
different pieces involved. So then when something, because developers don't know, and the prep work that they do to get to this point is very expensive. You know, so if they knew in this piece of Berry County, this is what we would like to see, then it streamlines some of that process.
So I would say, to go back to your question, what would we recommend? I think we would recommend, the county BRA does have a policy. It doesn't cover everything. It can't cover everything because, like you said, there's a lot of diversity in the county. But if I'm a local leader in a local community that is housing TIF curious, I would look at the policy that the county BRA has and see, okay, does this check 100% of the boxes that I would if I was creating it myself? Is it 50%? Is it whatever? And then you can be a little bit more surgical or be a little more prescriptive and, you know, that sort of thing. But you're not starting from nothing. You have something that the county has adopted, and you can choose to sort of tweak that if you want to at the local level.
I'm going to affirm that because I think you can start with what they have and be like, is there anything else that we need to add to it? Because we are a little different. And then you can even say, and this one you have, it's our number one priority. You missed our second priority, here's what it is. And you can even adopt that, and then they will follow it for you. And I will also affirm you that developers actually have been really responsive, positively responding to the policies, because then the negotiation doesn't go on forever, right? Because if you're new to it, and like you were saying, it's a lot to learn quickly, and you go back and forth, oh, we didn't think about that, now we need to change this. The developer's like, oh my God, I thought we decided that, and now we're back to where we were. If it's laid out, they know what they're walking into, and they've been telling us, and I think you too, we want it because we know what we're getting, and then it's much quicker, much easier, and we can move on.
Have we passed policy? The county passed?
But we passed it just this last month.
Oh, you did?
Brand new.
Eric's supposed to be taking it to the county commission.
The commissioners have.
So we have it.
Oh,
It goes
the
to
BRA
commission now.
has, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
The
okay,
BRA
we have
has,
it,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, so it's almost, it's
almost
being considered.
BRA has.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's broad brush, right, because it's county within the county.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so again, I'm at this lower level, so I've got a township I'm working with, and I've got a county I'm working with, our new development, right?
Yeah.
Who does this negotiations? Because Berry County's got its guidelines, its priorities. Berry Township has its priorities. How does that builder negotiate, and where does the TIF come from? And I'm losing.
My recommendation, you guys can say, is that you do it together. So there's a staff person from the Brownfield Development Authority, and you would ask them to include you in all the meetings, you do it together. And if you guys have some policy or got goals that are, you know, in addition to what that policy will be, then you got to talk to the county first, and then the two of you would go in with the developer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense for the county BRA to have those conversations in a vacuum outside of the local township, because if the local township doesn't approve it, it doesn't make any sense for the
Township has to approve it, county BRA has to approve it, and the county commission has to approve it.
Yeah.
So that is why doing it together makes the most sense, because you all should be approving the exact same thing.
Okay, thank you, that helps.
So I know the chamber's been involved with a lot of the housing projects that have been going on. And I know you have terrific software that can tell us where people shop, why they go outside of the county to shop. Can you do research to tell the county, mainly, like, let's say specifically, I'm just using my township, like in Hastings Township, what type of development housing we need, what the income level needs to be able to afford that I think on a county level. I mean, I think that's kind of your question as to where is it needed in the county? And who needs to go first? You know, we need to do this project in Delta first, and then we'll work on this one over here in Orangeville or whatever it may be.
So as far as which goes first, I think the communities are leading that themselves. is going first because they went first.
Right.
But we do have the housing study updated this year. We just got it back this last month. So we do have that, and we have tier sheets for each community that tells you what we're looking for and what the demographics for each area are. So I can send that to you.
How do we get that?
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And it's on our website. You can just go on our website. It's the housing study, and it's just been updated.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Question for you is, since you've seen what's already been written, Bear County, did they say that, because we're in this weird boat where we don't have building stuff with inside the township, right? The Hastings Charter, we gave it up to, whatever years ago, it's given up to the county. Does it actually say the township has to be involved inside of the draft plan?
So when we did this in Middleville, it did have to go, it was local, and it went from the village to the township, and then to BRA, and then the
But the
county.
village has a building authority, they have their own zoning, where the Hastings Charter doesn't.
Zoning is a separate conversation.
I got it, but still,
I think the local
basically, we
because
don't,
of the
in our
taxes.
township, we don't do anything that, any of the development, any of the building, decades ago was given to the county, right? That's how most of these townships here, with exception, more of an exception, do have your authority. Does it say in that draft that the township must be included in it?
I think the state law does, because it's a taxing jurisdiction. This is not about the zoning or the building. This is the tax increment financing plan
Okay.
that you would be approving is about the taxing jurisdiction.
That's
As long
fine.
as you're
I
a
just wanna-
taxing authority, then it would go to.
I've seen, you know, see what's coming out of Lansing right now, they're trying to take the township out of everything, so
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, no.
Legally, it does need to be, it's just some communities treat it, some communities, it goes to the county BRA first, some
Yeah, the
communities, it
order
goes
is
to the local municipality first.
I don't really
I'm a fan
care
of
where it
municipalities
goes
first.
I like
first,
it.
we just need to be brought in immediately. If they do, if I was an outside entity coming in, I'd probably go to the, if you quickly read here about how things work in Berry County, and I was looking at Hastings, you quickly go, I'm gonna go to Berry County, and start there. But they should be required in that draft policy to notify us immediately, so as somebody mentions it, not once we think we have a plan, they should notice, be required in that to notify us immediately.
Well, and I would say that's what our brownfield does, because this last TIF that came to us in Middleville, it came to us first, and we said, let's go talk to the village, and we all decided that they were asking for too much, and only 4 units were going to be affordable. So I think all 3 of the entities talked, and we all decided on the front end.
That works now, I always worry about personalities changing in the future, so I'd rather have it written in writing that says, everybody must be notified across the board as soon as any one entity is notified.
I'll send you the final ones through the county commission.
I'd actually like to hear it before it goes final, but I can't change it once it's finalized. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, this is the problem we went into. We go like, oh yeah, when it's finalized, I'll get that plan out to you. But not you, I hear this all the time from other places.
Yes.
I'm like, well, now I gotta go through the whole hoops of changing it. When if it's in draft, I can just go to the county commission and be like, don't approve that until they make this amendment. Right, like, so I'd like to see.
I can send it to you.
Yeah, this would be the time,
I'll send it
to
out
me,
to
this
you.
is the time to add it, not
Okay.
once it's approved.
Sure, I'll send it out to you.
Thanks.
All right, how are we on
Anything
time?
else for them?
One last question, we good?
All right, well, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that's been so much information.